Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports Carolina. And boy, what a show we've had so far. We broke down the game coming up this week. Huge game between the Carolina Panthers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you talk about championships and you talk about great running backs, and we talked about the great running game of the Carolina Panthers and how great it's been. My next guest, I'll tell you what, is incredible. Incredible guest, played in the 70s, was one of the best running backs of his era. It is my great honor, thrill, and pleasure to introduce to you on the WWBG 1470 AM and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com hotline. Let's welcome in legendary running back of the Minnesota Vikings, Chuck Foreman. Chuck, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's fine. It's getting cold up here, but snow's coming, but I'm good.
Well, good. You got to stay safe up there. And, we'll talk about cold in a minute. It's funny you mentioned that because it's definitely a topic I want to hit on with you today. But, one of the things, Chuck, that you were known for in your career was not just running the football and being able to spin all over the place and break tackles, but you were also known for receiving the football out of the backfield. I wanted to always ask you, if you had an option, okay, which did you prefer or which did you enjoy more? Getting the ball handed off to you and running with it, or going out for a pass and catching it?
Well, actually, for me in my time, man, I was just playing football. That was just part of the game. I just had to be good at everything. I never really separated, running or receiving the football. I think when I got here to Minnesota, even though at the University of Miami, I played many positions, running back, cornerback, wide receiver. I think that, developed most of my skills down there. But when I got to Minnesota, they asked me which position did I want to play, running back, wide receiver, or corner. So that's how it happened, and I just happened to be blessed to be able to do both, and they created an offense here in Minnesota. We used to call it the Purple Offense, which they, San Francisco called the West Coast Offense,
Right.
But that was our offense, and they kind of took it and ran with it and got all the credit for what we created.
Yeah, Chuck, talk about the era of quarterbacks that you played, that were your peers basically in the National Football League. When you look at the National Football League back then in the 70s, you had O.J., Tony Dorsett, Earl Campbell, Franco Harris, Larry Zonka, Walter Payton, one of my good buddies, Lawrence McCutcheon, and Lydell Mitchell, just to name a few. There was a big difference back in the game you played where it was run-first offense, where today's game is more of a pass-first offense.
Exactly, and it was run dominant for sure back in those days. You were credited with your yards from scrimmage. For me, that was a problem because I got yards from scrimmage and receiving the ball, but we had a lot of great players, and it was, like I said, it was run dominant, and those were all great players. And today's game, at least the runner receiver is getting the recognition he certainly deserves.
Now, what was it like? For those that don't remember, the Vikings used to play outdoors in the elements that he was just telling you about. Chuck was telling you about how it's about to get colder, but there was nothing like playing in Metropolitan Stadium. Do you think that was more of an advantage for the Vikings because of a lot of you guys living there, or was it a disadvantage having to play so much? And what was it like playing in those frigid temperatures?
I thought it was an advantage for sure. Generally when we got to playoff time, which was when the cold weather was setting in, we were playing against the LA Rams for the most part. And when we had them here, I thought that was an advantage because when that sun set behind that stadium, it dropped like 20, 30, 40 degrees. And, it was difficult to play in that weather. And if it snowed, it was even more difficult. So it was an advantage for sure.
Now, you went to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, you didn't win, but you went there 3 times. I mean, it's every NFL player's dream to get to the Super Bowl and obviously win the Super Bowl. Despite winning, talk about the fulfillment of at least getting to the Super Bowl, not just once, but 3 times.
Well, I think the challenge and the excitement, don't misunderstand me, the game itself was great. But the challenge was to get there and the things that you had to do to maintain that level of performance, the commitment, everybody being on the same page. And I think one of the things that motivated us, especially when I got here, this team was pretty solid. You know, they had a very veteran team, and they emphasized the fact that, okay, you play during the season and you play to pay your bills. When you play in the playoffs, you play in to save your money. So, even though there wasn't a lot of money in the playoffs in my time, when you made an extra $8, $9, $10,000, that was big to put away. That was one of the motivating factors in my era, to maintain and commit to being all you can be every game and to concentrate on everything you have to do. Mistake-free football, doing what they really, really, really emphasized all that. And if you were a guy that made mistakes, then you weren't on our team. That was just the way it went. So that's the key to me anyway, from my own personal experience, to get into the playoffs and doing well. And then it all starts this time of year because you got to get playoff ready.
Yeah, no doubt about that. When you look back at your career, Chuck, do you have any regrets, or what is your biggest regret that you can think of?
Well, I don't think I have any. Other than winning a Super Bowl, been there 3 times, never won one. I think that was tough to swallow for quite a while, as a matter of fact. And I guess I did have a little depression after the last one, no question about it. But all in all, I can't complain, and I played for a great organization and had a lot of great people that I played with, and I can only say it was a great experience for me.
Well, I want to talk about those plays. I want to start off first with the coach, okay, before we get to the plays. Talk about Bud Grant and the influence he had on you as a player and as a person.
Well, my parents had an influence on me as a person. Bud Grant had nothing to do with that, but he was a really good football coach. He was a disciplinarian. As a football coach, he expected you to come take responsibility for your being in shape plays. All the things I was saying to you, he was definitely a great leader from that aspect, and to show you what it takes to win. But as far as my person goes, my parents are responsible for the person that I am.
Now, I want to talk about some of the players. Let's start out with Fran Tarkenton. You lined up behind him, obviously, most of your career. What good, for those people that never got to see Fran Tarkenton, how good of a quarterback was Fran Tarkenton?
Fran was an exceptional quarterback, no question. I think he was here once. He was here. I think the Vikings drafted him, then they traded him to the Giants. Back in his time, the drop back passer was, in fact, the only way they wanted to go. I think Fran was the only quarterback that could move around, scramble, get away, make plays. And I think at the time, I think it was Norm Van Brockman, traded him to New York because he didn't like that type of player. But Fran revolutionized, in my opinion anyway, the way his position was played, because it was back then when I played that other than Fran that could were that athletic and were smart and all the things that you need to be with the ability to move around. And then you got to remember also back in that time, they didn't have people. You didn't have earpieces in your helmet with coaches calling your plays for you. You had to retain down distance situations. All that's what the quarterbacks to retain all that and share it with us. So it's a big difference when you compare quarterbacks. That's why I don't believe in that word GOAT. I believe that you can be the best of your time, but you can't be the best of all time.
Right, because errors are different. I mean, it's like in any sport. And because I always said, and it's funny you said that. I was having this debate the other day with one of the guys, and I said, no disrespect towards the quarterbacks today, but to the point you were making, you had to be a little bit smarter and more intelligent back in your era because of the lack of technology.
Well, the lack of technology. I mean, I think any quarterback got to stay smart for the most part. But I'm just saying, with the lack of technology, they definitely had to retain everything that in meetings. When they met, they had more meetings than us probably because they had to go over and over and over the game plan, down distance. All the things that we do too, and as a running back, you got to know all that. You got to look at defenses, being able to read, coming out the backfield, reading the defense, reading linebackers, which way to go when they were moving different ways. So it's all, it's all relevant to the success of a football team. But for quarterbacks, and like I said, in my era, and the quarterbacks, they say, "Oh, I'm a smart guy, no question about it," but to their advantage. They got all the technology to help. Upstairs they got, they can look down and see what's going on and tell them, instantly, and tell them what they want to see them do. And so, I have a problem, not a problem, but I wouldn't say a problem. But when I see these guys saying the greatest of all times, and I'm saying, okay, did they ever see this guy play? Like for instance, every play now in the NFL, you watch the game, everybody holds.
Right.
Everybody, every play.
Mm-hmm.
Now back in that time, if your hands were even out, most of the guys had to block with their fist clenched, hands clenched in the fist, and then that would keep them from any holding call. And then and you get your head out or around, it was done. I had a lot of long runs called back because of that. So, the blocking, everything about the game is exciting, that stuff, but you can't make comparisons to players of different eras. It's a different game. So I admire, and not admire, but I respect all the guys that play. Their talents and everything, but believe me, when you got big guys up there, you got cornerbacks that can get up there and bump and run you all the way downfield until the ball's left, half the guys wouldn't have half the yards they got today. So you can't make that comparison because when like a Lynn Barney or people like that getting up on you and bumping you all the way downfield, keeping you off your pattern. It's a different game. So you get more yards, you get more receptions, and I'm not saying they're not great players because they certainly are, but they're no greater than the ones that I watch play.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I always wanted to ask you this question, Chuck, and I'm glad I have this time with you to ask you. You were unbelievable. Actually, in 1975, I think you led the league in receiving, receptions for that particular year. Do you think your ability of being able to catch the ball out of the backfield as well as you did maybe hampered your chances at getting into the Football Hall of Fame because you weren't recognized maybe for what you did from the perspective of catching the ball out of the backfield as you were when you were running the ball out of the backfield?
Well, I think, first of all, I played fullback, and that was my position in the NFL. And certainly, no question about it, when they evaluate me, I mean, because there's guys in the Hall of Fame that, they belong there, but they don't have, well, how can I put it without sounding? Let's put it like this way. they haven't, there was some better. There was some good, but none better. I just did it differently. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. And I understand that.
And so, but when they evaluate these so-called experts, oh, he didn't do this and he didn't do that, but okay. When you talk about impact plays, changing games, scoring touchdowns, critical situations, okay, evaluate me on that. And I don't think in my era anyway, in the time that I played, there were nobody better. Maybe it's good, but none better.
Well, let me ask you this before we let you run here, because you're not the only Minnesota Viking, because I honestly think you should be, and I'm not just saying it because I've already said it. You were one of my favorite running backs in the 70s while I was growing up. But there was another guy you played with that I have said for years should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's guys like Fran Tarkenton, he made it. Alan Page made it. Ahmad Rashad made it. Paul Krause, I believe was his name, made it. Should, and I want your opinion because you watched him play for many years, should Jim Marshall be in the Hall of Fame?
That's, I don't know what the criteria for being in the Hall of Fame is. But, you said Ahmad was in there. Ahmad's not in the Hall of Fame. Not yet, anyway. Neither is Jim. So, like I said, another player, another evaluation by people we have no control over. They say this, and they say, for me, they say it's not as rushing earth, but they forget about, like you say, from my game, the receiving and all that stuff. And then when you talk about Jim Marshall, they say he didn't do this and he didn't, but hey, the man played 20 years.
Yep.
And he was a great leader on our football team. And, like I said, I don't know what their criteria for selecting Hall of Fame players. Only thing I know is that whatever it is, they need to regroup and change it, because he certainly deserves that too.
Chuck, last question. I'll let you run, buddy. What would it mean to you to get that phone call or to get that knock on the door saying you have been inducted to the Hall of Fame?
I really couldn't say. I think I let that shit sail long ago.
Right.
So I don't know. The feelings I have about it are not the same. I got to be straight and honest with you. So I guess it would be good, but like I said, it's not something I even give thought to anymore. Like I said, in my life anyway, I let that part of my life sail. I'm perfectly happy, perfectly satisfied with everything I've accomplished.
Yeah, and believe me, yeah, so am I. I mean, I had such great memories growing up watching you playing, and I want to thank you so very, very much taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on Frankly Speaking Sports Carolina.
But I want to say this to you too.
Okay.
But it's people like yourself that I hear from that have the knowledge of the game, that understand what I'm talking about, what I'm feeling about this NFL thing. I hear it from you. I've heard from a lot of people, because to be quite honest with you, most people assume that I'm already in the Hall of Fame, and are shocked when I say, no, I'm not there. And then they question about, well, this guy's there, and why aren't you there? Well, I have no clue. But the only thing, like I said to you, is I appreciate the respect, the recognition that you've given me, and that, when I get off this phone today, I'll be having a big smile on my face. I'll just say, there's another person out there that knows the real deal.
No doubt about that, my friend. I mean, I've watched you, like I said, growing up. I admired you for many, many, many years. And I'll tell you what, you were one of my favorites. And once again, I talk to people that I watched growing up. It's funny on this show. So obviously that just tells you the impact you had on my life growing up.
Well, I appreciate that. It's really a great honor to talk to you today. And like I said, man, I'll have a smile on my face. Thanks so much.
All right, my friend. Stay safe, okay?
All right. Take it easy.
You too. All right, that was the great Chuck Foreman. Well, folks, we're out of time. Oh, baby, this show goes so quick when we have so many great topics and guests to talk to and about. Next week, folks, bowl week is kicking up. We're going to talk about the North Carolina floor. We'll talk about Wake Forest. We'll talk about Duke. We'll talk about State. We'll talk about the Tar Heels all playing in bowl games. We'll preview those next week. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next Friday. Same time,